Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Jonasz Rewiński. Talks between the US and Russian officials are set to continue today in Turkey. Meanwhile, during his visit in Washington, Russia's economic envoy Kirill Dmitriev suggested Moscow might be open towards some form of security guarantees for Ukraine. Yet some say the attempted rapprochement between Russia and America could fall through due to Moscow's ongoing disregard of initial ceasefire arrangements in Ukraine. Are there any signs that Trump might ultimately lose his patience with Putin? And what could Moscow be planning to do next? Joining us now is Marek Menkiszak, head of the Russian department at the Center for Eastern Studies. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello.
So the question everyone seems asking today is, does Putin want a ceasefire and does he need one? Would you say that Putin genuinely wants to negotiate a ceasefire today?
I believe what Putin wants is to continue the process of negotiations, which would lead to a serious concessions on the part of the US, but effectively of Ukraine and also Europe. And the way he wants to do that is first to exert pressure, increasing pressure, military pressure on Ukraine, raising the stakes, political stakes, including through the very horrific attacks on the civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. But on the other hand, to send signals that he allegedly is ready for a ceasefire, but also for a sort of grand bargain with the US, involving opening up channels for serious cooperation between Russia and the United States.
So is the United States likely to play this game for a long time? Quite recently, in fact yesterday, Poland's foreign minister Radosław Sikorski suggested that Trump's patience could be running out, that America is not going to do this forever, saying that Russia isn't exactly doing what it promised when it comes to the ceasefire, for example.
Well, obviously the biggest question here is the limits of Trump's patience. This is the key. And I think what Putin is doing now is testing the limits. So basically, he continues to defy the calls for a ceasefire, but he does not say completely and flatly no to the process which is supposed to lead to that. That's why he agreed for signing not long ago a partial agreement on the stopping of attacks on energy infrastructure, as well as the refrain from to restoring the proper grain corridor on the Black Sea. However, we have to underline that these agreements are subjected to serious conditions which formally have not been met. I mean the relaxations of certain sanctions on the Russian exports of agricultural products, but also facilitation of connection of some Russian banks to the SWIFT system.
So in other words, Putin is probing with bayonets, as Lenin would have said, and he wants to see if he encounters mush or steel. Now, is America likely to finally take the stance that we would classify under steel instead of mush and say, okay, enough is enough? What could trigger that, do you think? What could trigger a change in the approach of Donald Trump towards Russia in this conflict?
Yeah, I think that's a key question now, and it's also clearly shows that today it's more difficult to read American administration than to read the Russians, which are basically doing the more or less same tactics as they applied previously. What we can see now is that visibly the American administration lost hope that there will be a quick fix and quick solution, and that the full-fledged ceasefire is very close and can be reached very easy. Can be reached pretty quickly through the negotiation process. And there was an open question which were posed by the U.S. State Secretary Rubio. Are Russians really ready to stop this war? Because there are serious concerns or serious doubts that they are in good faith participate in those talks. However, we could see also that the American administration is very reluctant to use coercive measures towards Moscow. So at this point, these were rhetorically mostly carrots, and no sticks could be seen. We could see Trump saying that he's frustrated with this lack of results and with the Russian attacks. There were previously threats on the U.S. part of using some economic means to pressure Russia, namely, for example, to establish tariffs, not only directly on the very small trade between both countries, but on other countries, on third parties who, for example, are purchasing Russian oil, which would obviously have very, very negative impact on the Russian economy, beside the current trend of lowering prices of oil, which is also a problem for Moscow.
It is. Sam said that inadvertently the current chaos on, in global trade resulting from the introduction of the tariffs actually hit Russia as a sort of afterthought, like that this was like a collateral damage in a way, what happened. And the Russians are actually feeling the heat because of the oil prices going so low. For Urals, actually, the price is like about $50 a barrel, which has resulted in the Russians going a bit into panic mode. Now, what do you think is Putin's plan in the long term? What if, for example, there is a ceasefire in Ukraine? Do you believe that he might be planning a bigger war, attacking the Baltic states, for example, or some other target in Russia's immediate vicinity?
Well, first of all, Putin wants as much as he can get, both through the diplomatic means and military means. We could see that at this point, at least, Russia is not capable of performing a large-scale offensive in Ukraine, and their gains on the front line are incremental. They are small. But what Putin counts on is that basically the US will lose patience not vis-a-vis Russia, but vis-a-vis Ukraine. And there will be discontinuation of military supplies, which will eventually lead to a serious setbacks on the front line. That's the military side of this. And the political side is to engage the Americans into this broad discussion going beyond Ukraine. What we could see is the Russian underlining that the talks should not be on Ukraine solely, but on the global issues and also European security as the so-called the root causes of this conflict. So they would like to probe how far the Americans could go in that broader matters. And finally, to your question directly, the Russians need to solve sort of Ukrainian question before they would go further in their aggressive means. So on whether they would be able to basically destroy the Ukrainian state through the military means, which is on this stage seemed unlikely, or through the political, mostly measures, they will be able to strike a deal which will offer them very serious wins in political terms in Ukraine, giving them demilitarization of Ukraine, giving them legalization of their annexations, giving them influence on Ukrainian policy, which is precisely their demands are about. And only then they will be trying to test further the possibility of getting concessions, including from the Central European countries, including from Baltic states, also using military pressure. So we cannot discard, and in several years especially, that the Russia reconstituting its military force will also use the military pressure in order to get some political concessions.
So at this stage, rearmament and deterrence becomes paramount. Marek Menkiszak was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insights.
Thank you.
And I'm Jan You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.